Our district mission is to support each student's needs by providing the opportunities, experiences, and educational tools for their journey. As a board, we adhere to our norms, which includes our social contract, which is that 1, be respectful, 2, practice active listening, 3, model our district 4Cs, make data-driven decisions, 5, focus on the whole district, 6, act with positive intent, and we govern, not manage, we steer, not row. I'd like to read an email from Michigan Association of School Board, Brad Vanassa. Hi Stacy, in addressing this issue, which is about the 3-2 vote, the statutory provision of the revised school code requiring a majority vote of board members for a valid act of the Board of Education must first be considered. Section 12011, in addition to requiring the business of the Board of Education to be conducted at a public meeting in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, states, an act of the board shall not be valid unless voted at a meeting by a majority vote of the members elected to and serving on the board and a proper record made of the vote. This statutory provision requires a majority vote of 4 board members of a 7-member board for any action to be taken. An action, whether voting for or against a motion, is not valid unless it is supported by 4 yes or no votes of board members present at the board meeting. Therefore, a 3-2 vote is not an action of the Board of Education according to statutory authority. Under such circumstances, because the board never took action one way or the other, it would be unnecessary to reconsider the 3-2 vote previously taken by the board under Robert's Rules of Order. Accordingly, a Board of Education could readdress an action item that wasn't approved by a 3-2 vote by simply adding the item to the next board meeting agenda. Thus, it is my opinion that a second vote, if supported by the majority of the board, would be valid because it would be the only action of the Board of Education with respect to the motion, despite a previous vote resulting in a 3-2 vote that didn't pass. And I hope that clarifies things for everybody. I will now call my public comments. And so far we have 2, so if anyone else is there, please fill out a card. And we'll start with Carol Finkelstein.
Good evening. I'm speaking to you as a very concerned constituent, a resident of the West Bloomfield School District. I want to address board ethics, integrity, and respecting the sanctity of every board vote. During the February 23rd meeting, 2 agenda items failed by 3-2 votes. Mrs. Brickman stated, and I quote, "You need 4 votes to either approve or disapprove, yay or nay. Since neither had 4 votes, we will be taking this up again at the March special meeting." The board is obligated to follow its bylaws, policies, and the law. Do not misquote, misinterpret, ignore, or incorrectly apply them. I call attention to your bylaws, 122, 161, 167.1, and the revised school code, Michigan Compiled Law 380.11a, number 5. All concur. A majority of legally serving board members is needed to approve. Incorrect information was given at the February 23rd meeting. Nowhere is a number of no votes specified, not in law, board policy, procedures, or Robert's rules. Without 4 affirmative votes, the motion failed. Both items are back on the agenda for approval tonight, but this board cannot just ignore them and the previous votes and act as if they never happened. The votes are recorded in your minutes. They were video recorded, and the meeting was broadcast to the community. One of the long-standing and important rules of this board requires that all trustees support the board's decision, regardless of whether you agree with the outcome. Returning these items to the agenda tonight implies that some board members believe that rule is good for thee, but not for me. Board policy specifies Robert's rules as the parliamentary guide. Robert's rules include mechanisms to reconsider a failed vote taken at a previous meeting. Those mechanisms are used when there is a change in law that necessitates further board action or when additional information comes to light that was not available at the time the original vote was taken. Perhaps the board has been provided new information on the failed budget amendment that merits reconsideration this evening, but neither mechanism applies to the failed millage vote. Absence of 2 members of the yes voting bloc is not a valid reason to rescind the votes or renew the motions tonight. When it was apparent that 2 board members would be absent on the 23rd, the president could have pulled the agenda items before the meeting began, but those items were not pulled. There were proper motions, both items were discussed at length and properly voted on. Those motions failed, but it was immediately announced that they would be brought back to the board for a revote.
Thank you. Ryan? Ridenhour.
Hi everyone, Brian Ridenhour, WBEA president. I'm going to do my best to be polite tonight because the last time we were together it was an extremely frustrating evening to say the least. People can have their disagreements, people can have a variety of viewpoints, fine. But to see members of my own school board look into the exhausted faces of teachers who have worked all day and then stayed there until 9:30 at night because the prospect of this enhancement millage means so much to them and their students, to look those people in the eye and say, you deserve the best, you're amazing, we love you, and then stab them in the back with those no votes, we were stunned. We didn't know what to say. It takes a true politician to say one thing to your stakeholders and then completely contradict those words with your actions 5 minutes later. Let's talk about this opposition to the enhancement millage proposal, which is just letting the community vote on it. Your votes tonight are not for or against the actual proposal itself. I heard concerns that if passed, the $3.2 million added to the budget each year could be spent on anything and that we couldn't even guarantee it would be used for teacher salaries. This is fundamentally inaccurate for 2 reasons. One, any major money that gets spent in this district has to go through you all. You are the bosses, and there's no way that $3.2 million would be spent without your approval process. And 2, the district is contractually bound to a staff wage reopener if it passes. What do you imagine the teacher union's top priority is going to be during those negotiations? Spoiler alert, it's raises for the staff. Because we know that attracting and retaining the best quality people translates directly into better results and higher quality programming for these kids. I also heard a concern that by using district resources to educate the public about the millage, we'd be picking a side. I'm sorry, when Macomb and Wayne passed their millages, I would like to see a single school district in those areas that chose to remain completely silent about the millage and didn't educate their public in any way. I don't think there's any way that's true. We can educate the public without being biased. I think the quote of the night that still rings in my ears now is when one board member said, I understand the democracy issue, but you understand the democracy issue? But when you start a sentence by acknowledging people's right to vote in our democratic system, that sentence should not end in buts. If having the constituents you serve vote on something that directly impacts them is an issue for you, then maybe the job of elected public official isn't the right fit. There's over 60,000 residents in West Bloomfield Township. 60,000. Where in the world did we get the audacity to think that 2 of your voices should cancel out the voices of 60,000 people who deserve their chance to speak their mind at the ballot box on the most important school funding proposal of the last 20 years? Because we're worried about the district sending mailers, or we somehow think that shooting down an extra $3 million to the budget will help the financial health of the school district? I'll tell you very directly, the staff will not forget being slapped across the face like this. We know 2 school board spots are up for re-election this fall, and we will work hard between now and then to make sure that the people on our school board support the staff, not just with lip service, but with their actions.
Thank you, Ryan. Any other comment on this? Okay, so we're moving on to agenda item number 3, which is our enhancement millage resolution approval.
Madam
Mr.
President,
Dajabali.
before that discussion, I have a governance matter related to the board policy 144.3. So, in regards to, Madam President, members of the board, before the board proceeds to agenda item number 3, I'm requesting that the board and the presiding officer herself consider recusal of the presiding officer from presiding over this item number, discussing and voting on agenda item number 3, in accordance with board policy 1443 regarding conflicts of interest, so that this matter may be considered with full impartiality. Board policy 1443, conflict of interest, requires that board members perform their duties in a manner free from conflict of interest and abstain from participation when that possibility of conflict exists. Board policy Board member ethics requires board members to avoid situations that could compromise independent judgment. And policy 123, philosophy of the board, reminds us that our actions must maintain the public's confidence in the integrity of this board. The concern arises from the presiding officer, President Whitman's role in collective bargaining negotiations. For more than 5 years, the presiding officer has served as the sole member of the teacher bargaining team, investing numerous hours of negotiation, contracts, and building working relationships with the district's employee bargaining units. This structure is unusual. In most of school districts, including many in Oakland County, collective bargaining is conducted by the superintendent and the administration team, who then report negotiations and recommendations to the board for consideration and approval. During the February 23rd board meeting, the presiding officer stated on record, "We intentionally spent down some of our operating fund balance through negotiations. That is why we approved the contract that we worked so hard to smooth out and the pay schedule. It was more than 2%, which raises for our people." These comments confirm a direct role in negotiating employee compensation and financial commitments on behalf of the district. Sound board governance recognizes that a board should maintain a 30,000-foot view of issues. The board's role is to steer, not row. When board members move from governance into operational negotiations, they move from steering and into rowing. Based on the president's officer's actions and her own statements on the record, the presiding officer has acknowledged a direct role in these negotiations. That level of involvement can reasonably be perceived as rowing rather than steering. Revenue measures such as the regional enhancement millage directly affect the financial framework used to support those negotiated commitments. When a board member is directly engaged in negotiating compensation and the board is then asked to vote on revenue measures that support those financial commitments, it can create the appearance of a competing interest, which our conflict of interest policy is intended to avoid. Additionally, at the February 23rd meeting, the vote on the millage resolution was yes, 3 yes and 2 no. Because the motion received 3 yes votes, the motion did not receive the required majority. Finally, under Robert Rules of Order, the presiding officer is expected to maintain impartiality while conducting the business of the board, period. Given the presiding officer's direct role in negotiations and public statements advocating for this revenue measure, the question of impartiality in presiding over this item on this agenda is a legitimate governance concern. For the record, and based on the facts stated above, the most appropriate posture for consideration of agenda item 3 is recusal of the presiding officer, President Whitman.
Well, that's interesting. Art?
Conflict of interest has to do with personal relationships, professional or otherwise, that an individual has that could unduly influence a vote that they're casting. Advocating for our teachers is not a conflict of interest, but rather a duty of the board, in my opinion. But she being Stacy, has represented us as a board, and we have represented ourselves in negotiations as well over the years. And again, we've been representing the board, again, that, when we've been working with the teacher unions, again, that does not rise to a conflict of interest.
One thing to point out also is that I've been in 3 districts, 2 of 3 have had boards sit on negotiation. It's not unheard of. It's really we discussed that early in my tenure of, is that what's best for the particular district? And we came to the conclusion it is. And like I said, the enhancement millage, although will benefit our teaching staff, will benefit every single employee in the district. And to my knowledge, every board member has sat on some negotiation. So that, that's just, that would mean almost no one can vote.
Well, when I say we, I was talking about the board because it was
Yeah.
within the board parameters, so
to bargaining, negotiation, and school board presidents and members being in such negotiations have been brought up by me, and questions have been asked the Michigan Association of School Boards, which they have gone through to talk about how school board members and presidents should not be included in negotiations, as well as the National Association of School Boards.
Yeah, most of those do traditional bargaining, not interest-based.
That is
You
what the
served on a
pronounce-
team, well, when you show, I mean, you served some of the days.
And I also recused myself and took myself out, and haven't served on one since my first year in the board, and have spoken against this policy for this very reason.
Well, yeah.
I'm gonna move on to agenda item number 3, enhanced millage resolution. Is there a motion? Art?
I move to adopt the attached resolution requesting that Open Schools place a regional enhancement millage proposal on the August 4th, 2026 election ballot pursuant to section 705 of the revised school code per enclosure 3.
Do I have a second? Ashley. Motion to adopt the attached resolution requesting that Open Schools place a regional enhancement millage proposal on the August 4th, 2026 election ballot pursuant to section 705 of the revised school code per enclosure 3 has been moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments regarding it? Person?
I want to address a matter that goes to the heart of the board's integrity and our obligation to follow established board policy, procedures, and the law. And it's not one individual or individual's wish on how it's to be interpreted. And I'll state the facts. A quorum was present at the February 23rd, 2026 board meeting. The Board of Education vote regarding the enhanced millage was 3 to 2, 3 yes, 2 no. This agenda needed a 4 yes majority for the motion to pass. As it did not, the motion fails, and this needs to be properly recorded and reflected in the meeting minutes, I believe. What concerns me deeply is that the comments made during the meeting signaled disagreement with the outcome and an attempt to revisit a vote that was already validly decided. As board members, we do not have the authority to override the law because we dislike the results. When we look and examine the history of our board votes, we have not reconsidered, nor have we conducted a revote. Consistency is key, and precedence has been established. And what message are we sending our community? Each time board members cast their votes, the community voice is heard, allowing board to proceed with its decision. Disregarding a vote effectively silences that community. And our personal views cannot supersede statutory requirements or the democratic process. And the hypocrisy of this all is that the actual motion that the board was considering was focused on the democratic process and letting voters be heard. But no new information has been provided. We asked for a plan. That was our goal, so that our community could hold us accountable. Also concerning is that the board received 2 emails following the vote. It is the president's duty to respond to the emails on behalf of the board. These emails went unanswered by the president. This is an ongoing concern of mine. Ignoring differences in opinions, whether in public comment or email, is just not acceptable. The public deserves confidence that this board hears our community voices, respects the law, honors its own vote, and does not manipulate procedures to achieve a preferred outcome. The 3 to 2 vote needs to be recognized and stand. I sincerely hope that moving forward we will adhere strictly to the Michigan Revised School Code, our West Bloomfield School District policy, board code of conduct and operating procedures, and uphold the integrity of our governance. And I also would request that information from the lawyer, from Brad, had been shared with us before this meeting.
Stacy, I just want to correct. Everything we've done has followed the law. I want to assure the board that Brad Banasic is the major legal counsel for the Michigan Association of School Boards. I also then had our in-house attorney affirm that legal opinion that basically said when it's a 3-2 vote, you can bring it back as a vote because the majority of the quorum of the board did not vote no on this. It would have been a different story if it was 4 no votes to 3 yes votes or 4 no votes to 2. When President Brickman reached out to Michigan Association of School Board and we got that legal opinion, I then checked with in-house counsel to affirm what he was saying. So all of the law has been followed, the Robert's Rules of Order, you might not like it, but all of the law was followed, and is in accordance what we do. And then going back to the plan is something that will not be decided in isolation. Boards have to consider this resolution to give the voters the opportunity to vote on that. That's not gonna be one person who decides how this 3.2 million in additional funding will be done. We'll be working with our bargaining units, with our curriculum department, with our HR department. That's going to be a collective work in the budget process, which the ways that schools are funded, we wait for a budget until deep into the summer to be able to have these plans. So again, to say that in a 2-month period, we were already gonna assess how we're gonna spend $3.2 million, it would be, I would think you'd be worried if I already said, I already know how we're gonna spend the 3.2 million in August. This is how we're gonna do it to invest in people, invest in student programming. What that is, that will be done through strategic visioning and strategic planning, and that will be done collectively as a school family to come to the board and say, this is how we plan to utilize these funds. So, and part of it is, is that plan is done as a team. So we had a couple months in terms of when we were given this resolution, when we take it to our boards. I think ultimately what the board is voting on right now is, do the residents of Oakland County get to decide on this ballot if they feel this investment is worthwhile? Ultimately, it's in the voters' funds.
Yeah, I want to make sure it's clear, we, meaning the board, are not voting for the enhancement bills. What we are is we're voting to allow our residents and taxpayers to express their opinion and interest. And that, coupled with the fact that we've got a legal opinion saying we're doing everything legal, I see no reason not to proceed with this resolution.
And before I call the vote, I'm just gonna say that being the president of the school board, this is my 8th year, I do not give up my right to speak my opinion. Many times I don't, unless it needs to be said, and I felt like it needed to be said. But I do not give up my rights to share my opinion, whether you like it or not. I mean, I bite my tongue a lot. I don't overshare. I don't speak a lot. My votes usually speak for me. But on that night, I was completely frustrated with the reasons that were given to not support it. So that's all I'm gonna say on that. So all those in favor
No,
say aye.
I'm sorry, but we didn't get this proper discussion.
What?
I have a
You
comment.
wanna say something?
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to say that when we talk about enhancement millage, again, our district is faced with a $4 million deficit. And this is the second year in which we have pulled in a deficit. And I like when I hear that we're gonna work collaboratively with our bargaining units, our strategic planning and our visioning, and we're going to work collectively to develop a plan. I would like for us to work collectively to balance our budget. Because when we talk about a $4 million deficit, to balance our budget means that $3 million would already be here. Because if we work
I don't think this is germane to this agenda item. That is a budget conversation.
so it is, because I will continue. So because of the $4 million.
I actually don't think that's how Robert's Rules of Order works.
No, this is germane to the topic, because again,
We're talking about an enhancement millage and you're talking about an operating deficit.
I'm not debating, I'm gonna finish the comment, it is germane.
Well, Bill,
Yep.
you can finish it up. It's really not germane to the enhancement village.
It absolutely is, because we're asking our voters in our area to approve an enhancement millage to bring money into.
We're not
our-
asking them to
But
approve it, we're
and
asking them to vote
to
on
bring
it.
money into the district that hasn't balanced its own budget.
Okay, it's not
So-
germane,
so
it's not
again,
germane to the topic.
It is absolutely germane. And again, not avoiding that vote or that voice of the board member is something that we're talking about. We're gonna let the board members, we don't have a voice if you're shutting down that voice. Each one of us represents
Of course.
those persons that voted for us for this
So-
office. So as the enhancement millage, again, we talk about how many meals that we would actually levy our taxpayers. So 1.5 would bring in about $4 million from this West Bloomfield family. 3.9, let's round up to $4 million.
No, she's
So
talking about
she's about
overall.
Yeah, overall. So we'll bring in $4 million as we levy $1.5 million, or 1.5 meals per our taxpayers. We would only then receive $3.2 million. So that again, we would be considered a donor district. So not only would we not be getting the money back, all of the money we levered from our taxpayers back, we would then be donating to other districts, including public charter schools. Furthermore, because this millage is broken up by those students in the district at 170,000, we have 4,000 students. So we would only be getting 2% of the pot. That's just math. So we can talk about, what we want the millage to be, but we have to talk about what it truly is, and we have to educate the voters. I will not support it. I think that we need to, again, balance our very own budget and make sure that we are providing the revenues we have in-house for programs to service our students.
I have a follow-up question. So, Danya, I hear you say that, this will be a collaborative effort and we don't know what to do with the money. But, well, no, sorry.
I know, but it's okay.
Before everyone jumps down
I'm just
the
kidding.
road, right? So, we don't have an exact plan. But when we come to the community for a vote,
Yeah.
right? For sinking fund, for bond, we have a plan. How and why is this one different?
So this one is different because, again, when you look at things that, in terms of like programming and technology and staffing, we've already said a big part of this is investing in our people. So that's pretty self-explanatory in what that means. That is a big, 80% of our budget is people. And so part of the enhancement millage is so that we can be competitive with Wayne and Macomb County. The other things I mentioned were the CTE and STEAM space. We have amazing programming currently, but what does programming look 5 years from now? We see what AI is. What's that space going to be utilized when our current staff are gonna retire 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years down the road? So what type of AI, robotics, I don't mean robotics in terms of like FIRST robotics, I mean in terms of material and logistics planning robotics. Like, what type of programming do we offer at West Bloomfield High School? We're investing a lot in that space. We need the programming to match it. Part of it also is, what's the first thing that tends to get cut when budgets are tight? Mental health specialists, social workers. It's being able to maintain those. And honestly, I explained this last time, I really don't trust the state of Michigan in the way that they're funding public schools. I believe, now this is where I'm getting into anecdotal, I do believe there is an attack on public education. And I think that they continue to raid the K-12 school aid fund and put it into higher education and continue to put it into things that are not K-12, things that are important and that I support, but they're taking the funds then from K-12 education. So for me, this is something we need to do to protect our programming, currently what we have today, and make sure that those are sustainable for the future. I don't, will they come through? I don't know. In the past 4 years, it has not. And for me, like I said, public education is very, very personal to me. It is what changed the trajectory of my family, and it's something that I'm deeply committed to with my own children, and to me, that's the true path to the American dream, is through an education. So to me, this is one way, again, that Wayne and Macomb have utilized those funds. Would it be as pressing if you're not surrounded by places that have it? Maybe, I don't know. It's been a while since Oakland has taken the steps to put this on the ballot. I think it takes, of the 28 districts, a lot of guts to advocate for public ed and say, we know this is a hard ask. We know this is a lot of work, but we're gonna do it. So I think many superintendents have had similar discussions with boards, that have been this challenging. I mean, so I'm not surprised by it, but, long-term, I believe it's what's best for kids. I focus all my decisions on what's best for kids and, not what's easiest for adults.
I do wanna say though, when we look at this, again, other districts around us, we are a district with a $4 million deficit, and when we look at our neighboring districts and our peer districts, we are one district with, in our peer district and other districts that carry that amount of deficit, which tells me again that we need a structural plan so we can bring in our own local spending, and that local spending can then be given to our teachers and those programs. The state of Michigan is giving all of us the same treatment. When I say that, the same school aid budget is coming to West Bloomfield, it's going to Birmingham, it's going to Novi, it's going to Farmington. The same budget is going to all of our neighboring districts and peer districts. But they find themselves in different predicaments than we do because they don't carry a hefty deficit balance. They are balancing their budgets, some of them, and they are bringing that money back in-house for our teachers, for our programs. So we have a local spending issue that we do not have a plan that we can look at and get under control. So with that plan of spending, again, asked for that last year, before the budget process got started, asked for it this year, we don't have a structural plan. Our neighboring districts do, and they're getting the same amount from the state as we are. But they're experiencing bringing in and controlling their local spending, therefore being able to give their teachers and programs money because of a balanced budget.
I'm not gonna get into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I would look at the 28 districts
I have a
budget,
question.
so. And Stacy, the last thing I'm gonna say, I'm sorry. For the past 2 years, we've added to fund balance. So even though we start with an operating deficit on paper, we actually have not touched $1 of fund balance in the past 2 years. There is a plan. I keep saying there's a plan. Any HR knows that when you make reductions through attrition, they're done by the administration because that's who's hired to do that. I mean, I think we can agree to disagree on that. There is a plan. We've made reductions. If you go to the last year's budget presentation, it shows you the amount that we reduced in staffing on the expenditure side. It shows that number very clearly. So, that's, I'm
Yeah, I just have a question. What we're voting on right now is not the budget or the budget deficit. What we're voting on is allowing the taxpayers to decide if they want to vote for an enhancement millage. And I think we're getting it muddied up. We're just allowing the taxpayers, our residents, to vote on whether they want an enhancement millage. And if you feel that, if someone feels that we gotta get a budget, talk to your residents about it. But let them decide. Let the residents decide if they want the enhancement millage.
We'll do a roll call. Kirsten?
No.
Deborah?
And
Nick?
Yes.
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 And I'm yes. Motion passes 4-2. Agenda item number 10 is our general fund budget amendment number 1 approval. Ms. Nancy Huber, Executive Director of Financial Services, presented at the last 2 meetings. Do I have a motion? Do we have a motion? Oh wait, where's our?
I think you just walked out for a second.
Okay.
Talk real slow.
Was there an issue?
I have no idea.
I can talk real slow.
He's right there.
It's just
He's
he's
coming back.
He's coming back. I just didn't know if there's.
why are we waiting for him to make a motion?
Huh?
We're waiting for him to make a
No.
motion?
Well, I didn't know if there was something wrong.
move to approve the resolution amending the general fund budget for the 2025-2026 fiscal year per enclosure 4.
Do we have a second? Or, a motion to approve the resolution amending the general fund budget for the 25-26 fiscal year per enclosure 4 has been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on that?
You know, same issue, when we talk about our budget, looking for a comprehensive structural plan, to address the $4 million deficit. Again, this is what I will continue to say in regards to a plan. So the state of Michigan, again, awards the districts. And we are not happy necessarily about that, but again, all districts have the money that comes through the state, but also can control their local spending. That local spending then comes under control with have a balanced budget. We have a $4 million deficit. And although I may say that repeatedly, it's because it is important that we have a structural plan to reduce our structural deficits, period. So in our amended budget, we still have an operating deficit of $4 million, which means that we have a local spending issue.
Is there anything in the amended budget that you think is wrong?
So as I indicated in the previous meeting on the 23rd, I do not debate the strength of the audit. I'm not just, when we talk about what's wrong,
It's about the budget, it's about the
it's
$4 million.
having it's a $4 million deficit that we need to say, we need to understand our programming, we need to understand our spend. A lot of talk has been moved around our fund balance of $17 million. If we take our fund balance of $17 million and divide that by $4 million, we only got 4 years left. So again, fund balance cannot be an answer. It is not a solution to balancing your local spend. Right now, we are spending more than our revenues. Our peer districts and our neighboring districts have enjoyed themselves by having a balanced budget. We do not have that.
I'll take a roll call. Art, I'll start with you on this one.
Yes.
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 Doug?
No.
Kirsten?
No.
None, yes. Motion passes 4-2. Agenda item number 5 is our stormwater resolution approval. Mr. Jamie Stoudemire, Executive Director of Facilities and Operations, Ted Stinson, Director of Maintenance, and Jenna Sandra Arch Environmental will address the board.
Good evening. Are we up? We're all right.
We'll just-
Okay. Every 3 years, Eagle requires the board to adopt a resolution for the renewal of the municipal separate storm sewer system, the MS4. That's a tongue twister. So Jenna here has been kind enough to come to explain the program for us tonight. Jenna and Ted work together to manage this for our district, and they have for many years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jenna to let us know about the program.
All right, so, because you're a public entity, the district is required to be covered under a stormwater permit for the discharge of stormwater from your properties, right? And you have to be in an urbanized area, so this is why you have to have a permit. You've had a permit for 10+ years. As part of the permit application, it asks for an ordinance. Because you're a school district, you cannot have an ordinance. So what Eagle has decided and has accepted is for you to sign this board resolution that basically says that you will, you agree with all the items that are in the permit and the plan. It actually doesn't, you're not agreeing to anything additional to the permit. Everything that's in the permit you have to do. You're just, what Eagle wants for most permits or other programs, Ted, facilities director, could be the main point of contact, sign that sort of thing, but Eagle wants the entity that in power, right, to be the ones to sign it, to show that I believe that the district understands that there is a permit, and that you're gonna, basically, comply with it. And most of it is just, you won't discharge contaminants to the storm sewer system, you won't truck paint down the sewer, you will educate your contractors not to discharge, things like that, you'll do public education, you'll follow post-construction standards, all of this is done already, and has been in process, so this is just kind of a formality that they do with every new permit cycle, because they realize there's new people on the board sometimes, so they wanna make sure that it's renewed again during that permit.
Every 3 years, and the last time we did this was 2023.
Right, it's supposed to be 5 years, they're getting there, it hasn't happened yet, so hopefully it'll be every 5
I
years
don't think
doing
it's
this and
just
that.
done, to be honest with you, it feels like it was just done, but
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
They're
it was.
so behind that the permit cycles are shortened when they should be 5 years, but eventually it will be every 5 years. that the
You
board
guys
is-
approved it in November of 22, but then they applied for the permit in 23.
So I was probably here in 22, yeah, telling you the same
Yeah.
thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions on what the permit is or?
Let me get a motion first and then we'll talk. Anybody? Alright.
Motion to approve the stormwater board resolution to ensure compliance with Eagle MS4 permit requirements and to maintain the district's authorization to discharge stormwater for enclosure.
Wait a second. Motion to approve the stormwater resolution to ensure compliance with Eagle MS4 permit requirements and to maintain the district's authorization to discharge stormwater per enclosure 5 has been moved and seconded. Is there any follow-up questions or comments regarding the person?
Other than the dates, any of the language change from
The language is not changed at all, if anything, it's probably been shortened to, to make it more concise, we try to continually do that, so yes.
Perfect.
And this is for the entire district, it's not just one school or one.
No, so
specific-
basically the permit covers all of your, school buildings that fall within the permitted area.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion, all those opposed say no. Sorry. Any opposed? No. Motion passes 6-0.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Jenna.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you guys.
Hopefully we
Have a
won't
good
see you
night.
for 5 years.
Now we'll see you in 3. Maybe more.
Come back anytime.
Oh, okay, I will, I didn't even wanna hear about it.
We need one more chair, I think.
Agenda item number 6 is our Jordan bid approval.
Good. Come on.
We have Mr. Jamie Stottlemyre, which you all know, Tyler Mackey from Odd Construction, Bill Weinrock, and John Casanella from TMP. And we'll all address the board.
We have enough seats, we're good. Most of the team is here in support of this tonight. We did review this at the last board meeting, we went over the bids, and at the time, we were talking about the incredible amount of work that Tyler and the team has done to interview all of those contractors. As we were very proud of, just really quick going through the building, we'll go back to this, but there's a view of the front elevation, the back elevation. It'll be sitting similar to where the existing building is, just on the north side of the Rouge River. And then this is a look inside the atrium. So we were very proud of the fact that, and we mentioned this last time, that we beat the 118-year record by having the most bids ever submitted for one project, which is a huge milestone. I mean, if you think about it, 118 years, and that's showing that a lot of these companies that are bidding on these projects respect the team, respect the district leadership. We're designing exciting projects that they want to work on. And just as a reference, we received 134 bids when we did our main package for Chico. So we've made a lot of headway. We're gonna have to get like 200 on the next job, no pressure. We did include the bid tabulation forms in there for the board to take a look at. Tyler, when he designed this bid package, we had 38 categories. And this is a list of all the categories which we did go through last time. I'm gonna have John talk a little bit about the alternates. Last time when we went through all of the alternates, there were 7 of them. And at the time, we were recommending 1, 3, 4, and 5, if you remember correctly. After discussing with our team, and John will talk a little bit about this, we decided not to bring forward alternate number 4, which is burnished block in the main corridor. So John, if you wanna go through these, I do have the drawings I can pull up if you'd like. I don't know if you wanna stand up and go up by the screen, you can explain it, and then I'll
Yeah,
make
I think
what
the first
your
one,
PowerPoint.
the first one is the canopy out front of the building that you see in that drawing right
Can you zoom
there.
it in there?
What's
Can
that?
you zoom up or-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just,
I'm on, yeah,
I don't know, it's just
There you
me.
go.
there you go.
Is that better?
Better.
Let me move up here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, bye.
Please don't trip on any of the
Don't touch
cords.
the screen.
Please.
Done that before. This is the main
Alright, let's make it
canopy.
easy.
And to protect the bidding, the integrity of the
No, no,
bidding,
no, take,
we.
somebody move those cords. Thank
Don't
you.
worry about it.
No, no, your foot is right
There
there.
you go.
Okay, all right.
Stacy tripped recently.
Can't trust me on
Yes,
this.
yes.
To protect the bidding, we came up with some alternates to, you know, because the market can be skittish at this point in time. You know, AUK has did a great estimate for the project, but we wanted to have some protections built in. And one of the items that we looked at was the front canopy. Now, this canopy really protects the students and visitors coming into the building. And to give you a perspective, over at Chico, we have a canopy that's under the terrace that's up there. Some of you went to the walkthrough the other day. And that canopy there is about 1,250 square feet of covered area. And the one that we have here at Doherty is 1,300 square feet. So they're very, very comparable size-wise. And it really does provide good protection for the students and the visitors coming into the building. So we're really recommending, along with the team, to include that canopy.
So I'm gonna show this is with the canopy. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, out front, they've done a good job of separating bus traffic from the parent drop-off loop. So the parent drop-off loop actually swings all the way around, crosses the Rouge River, goes onto the south property, comes back around,
Right.
crosses the Rouge River again, and then those students get dropped off on the west end of that canopy.
Right.
So that would keep the student,
And
the car drop-off line
to the main entry.
Right.
And buses come in
out front.
out front. They would come in this loop, and they drop off also at the front door, but they're totally separate loops from that standpoint.
And then this is a rendering without the canopy.
Can you
Right.
go back and
Yeah.
forth
Go
a
back
couple
and
times,
forth
go
for a
back and.
Yeah, I'll go back and forth.
Yeah.
Do it back and.
So this, if you remember at Chico has that bump out in the cafeteria. That's the similar bump out there, so, it's
the
located
That's
behind.
that's the stage area.
But yeah, correct.
Over at Chico.
But there's still adequate, like, walk space underneath the canopy. Like, how
Yes.
deep is it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's,
The depth of it. I don't even know exact number, but there's enough.
It's about
Okay.
15 feet deep, you know, that's gonna give you good cover, and you really need that cover for protection from the elements. You know, we do have the large area here, which is where the entry is, but if there's a driving rain, it's not gonna really protect. And it was always designed with that canopy in mind. And again, we did that as an alternate just to protect the bids if things went haywire with the bidding market.
And I don't know how Jordy particularly does their drop-offs, but a lot of them, the kids kind of congregate outside,
They do.
and then they get, like, called, so they're.
Yeah, and actually, that's exactly
Yeah.
the same way, so we do need that cover underneath the canopy.
So alternate 2 was the cafeteria decorative tree. We talked a little bit about that last time. We're not recommending that one. Alternate 3 is the common ceiling panels, and let me get to a rendering of that.
Can I-
So this ties
Wait,
into,
hold on. Did you have something on
I-
the
on
canopy?
oh, you wanna
On
go
the
back to it?
canopy,
Yeah.
so why wasn't, if that's the whole plan, why wasn't that included? Why is this in
Because,
addition?
because of the market, when you go out to bid, you know, you're not exactly sure where the bids are gonna come into. So in order to protect the overall budget, they'll take out components which could be installed later potentially and bid those as alternates. Like as an example, the bridge was separated into its own category because that could be put in at a later date. The canopy out front could be installed at a later date if we really wanted to. So there's components that they will bid separately so that because it doesn't impact the overall educational process. If I'm misspeaking, John, help me out here a little bit.
You're doing good.
But essentially, it's a feature that we would like to have if the budget came in, acceptable to everyone.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
So we're gonna go into the inside of the building now to the learning stairs. So the alternate, number 3 is the common ceiling panels, which John will talk to, but also in the same photo, we have alternate number 5, which is the flooring upgrade. So the common ceiling panels are those acrylic panels that John's gonna tell you about in a second. And then alternate 5 is to go from a polished concrete floor to an upgraded terrazzo floor in all of the main hallway areas. So John, take it away.
Okay, the ceiling panels, and these are panels that are above the learning stair. And again, we were just looking at some items that could be installed later if the bids did not come in favorably from that standpoint. But as you remember, when Carrie was talking about the overall feel of the building and the kind of environment that it is, we're looking at that whole entry sequence being the northern lights. We've just been using that as a imagery of that space. And these acrylic panels that are up above the learning stair are positioned like the Big Dipper up in that area. So when you look up, you actually can see the constellation from that standpoint. It's a decorative feature, but it really has a really nice impact for the learning opportunity. And the whole building is about learning, just like Chico is all about learning for the kids. And then the terrazzo allows us the opportunity to actually, with different colors of terrazzo, to be able to get Michigan and the Great Lakes embedded right into that flooring area. And again, it becomes another learning opportunity for the children. And from a maintenance standpoint, terrazzo is a great product, obviously, from a longevity standpoint, 60, 70, 80 year kind of and even then, it's still gonna be there from that standpoint. So we're highly recommending that, to upgrade that floor finish.
And that's in the main corridor.
Main hall.
I had multiple corrections over here, because it's
Oh.
not all the
No,
corridors,
it's
the
not
student.
it's just that main
classroom
area
corridors,
where we
yeah.
have the timber framing and the wood ceiling area. It's that particular hallway, which is the main entry hallway coming in. And it's the entry or the exit area that kids are going out to the play area. So that's the main feature spot.
And then can you talk about, alternate number 4 was burnished block in the corridor
Yeah,
here, this is a shot of it
I
down
don't
the
know if
main.
you're familiar with burnished block, but burnished block is a concrete product, but it sort of grind the face of it, and some of the aggregate is then exposed. And it doesn't require painting, it gets sealed from that standpoint. But we talked a lot about, do we really need that or not need that? And I felt with the wood timbers that we have and the wood ceiling, that's the big emphasis within that space. And I think what you're touching on the floor with the terrazzo is much more effective than the wall surfaces of the area. So I was strongly recommending that you save those dollars and you can put it towards something else within the building and not spend the dollars for the burnished block. I think we could still, we have a nice scoring pattern on the block, the coursing pattern, and I think with paint on that area, we have a lot of display areas within that as well. So by the time you do all of that, and we did a similar one at Chico too. We took an alternate for burnished block at Chico. We did not accept it over there as well, because a lot of it was being covered anyway with display areas, and this is fairly similar to that.
The other thing I wanted to mention though, from a constructability standpoint, is the burnished block in this case is load bearing, which means as soon as the foundations go in, we have to start building up with the burnished block to support the building. So that means it goes in at the very first part of the job, which means it all has to be protected during the entire duration of the construction project, because burnished block, you cannot patch burnished block. You have to actually cut it out and put in a new one if one gets damaged. versus normal masonry in the course of construction. You can patch it with mortar and paint it and no one ever notices, and it's just as structurally sound as when, the regular block. So from a constructability standpoint too, in this particular job, that would have been difficult.
Yeah, and you've all seen masonry with white streaks on it, efflorescence, and that can happen because of exposure to the salts in the outdoor environment, so.
And then alternate 6, it was a deduct alternate to go from a nice handrail in the main staircase
Right.
to a cheaper, just painted steel pipe. Do you want to tell them a little bit about that?
Well, there's one stair in particular that's closest to the administrative area, and that most of the children are gonna be using that stair. We have other stairs as well, but they're more service stairs, and you need them for exiting. This one's gonna take a lot of wear, and we have stainless steel railings that never have to be painted, and I think it's the right solution for this. So we didn't feel that what was it, $64,000?
$62,000.
$62,000 credit was not worth doing that for the long-term liability of those areas and the less maintenance that it would require.
I was just gonna say, I think that is perfectly accurate, because at the middle school, they have some painted handrails, and every time I go there, it drives me
Yeah,
insane
it's,
because
In the
they're
cafeteria,
red.
the auditoria?
Yes!
Yeah, those are being redone over spring break. The
They've
issue
been
is,
redone, like,
during the
recently.
pandemic, they had trouble getting paints and stuff, so some of the paint that they had
Yeah.
to acquire then, needs to
But the point is, it's something we have to maintain and deal
Correct.
with.
Right.
Whereas
We do.
this could be
It's-
a
it's-
no maintenance.
it's forever.
And
It's
this
like-
will take
it's like the
the
Toronto
bulk
Square.
of the student traffic too, up and down that
It really is,
staircase.
that's gonna be the major circulation route all the way through.
And the last alternate was the wood bridge, and that
Right.
was very expensive, so.
Yeah, and this, I don't know if you remember, we talked about having a big suspension bridge going across that was gonna go 172 feet, I think it was. And then when you've been to golf courses where you can drive over wetland areas, and there is a walkway or a pathway system that is allowable to be able to actually put piers in the Rouge River, just like they do at golf courses and on wetlands. So we took that as an alternate because that is something that is not absolutely critical, but it's something that the district certainly can do at a later date. It's a very independent structure, so we wanted to keep that as an alternate. At least we have a price on it, and we can always revisit that later. Any other questions on the alternates?
Just one.
Bids came in really good all the way through, and having 180 bidders really helps to
There's a
have.
question over here, John.
Yep. Yes.
Oh, you have one.
Oh,
Actually, let me do a motion first, and then we do discussion. So who wants to make the motion? Nick?
I move to approve the construction contract awards for the new Doherty Elementary School project as presented in the letter of recommendation dated March 9, 2026, and shown in the project cost summary sheet, GWA job number 9698, dated March 3, 2026, including trade contracts totaling $35,399,684 per enclosure 6.
Do we have a second? Motion to approve the construction contract award to the new Doherty Elementary School project as presented in the OC letter of recommendation dated March 9th, 2026, and shown in the OC project cost summary sheet, GWA job number 9698, dated March 3rd, 2026, including trade contracts totaling $35,399,684 per enclosure 6 has been moved and seconded. I don't know who had a first question. Is it Deborah or?
What is it, Ron?
Just wanna say that somewhere in the future, I wanna do a lifetime pedestrian.
Always.
So hopefully we can make.
But we'll just see how it is at the end, and we can always do it another time as well. It's very independent.
Early on in the design, the playground was actually gonna be on the south end of the Rouge River, on that piece of property, but it just worked better to have it closer to the building for many reasons, and so early on, the bridge was to gain more access to the playground.
Alright, so without the bridge, the kids would still be able to get to the south.
Yeah, they just have to
Correct.
walk on.
They walk
we
around
have
the sidewalk. There's
there's
still
sidewalks.
access.
There's accessibility. It's not, we were hoping still gonna see the water.
Your future thing if that's what, Deborah, did you have something?
I do, and just, I got just questions, cause I need understanding, cause I don't have it fully. So if I look at the 35,339,684, my question is centered around the alternates. So the 35,339,684 and the dollar amount, is that the base price and then
That includes the that also includes the alternates.
all of
In that
them?
number, all
The
the
ones
ones
they
that we
chose.
the ones that we just talked about. The canopy,
So
the
one,
terrazzo floor.
3, 5.
Yeah, 135.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's folded into that number.
Okay, so the alternates 1, 3, and 5 are folded into the 35. So when it says total project costs all in 47, help me understand and break that number out for me, because I'm trying to figure out what the difference.
You wanna go through that? I got a bigger version of it if you wanna see it. Here.
This one?
Sometimes I can't see small numbers.
So
Yeah, they
it's on
do
the-
have a
It's
copy
on
of
the
this.
slide too.
So it's like it's the contracts that we're approving are the 35 million.
Yeah, we did the similar thing at Chico where, so everything in green on this particular page is that 35 million, and then you can see the additional cost line up below that.
More to come.
No, so all of that is like already negotiated, like construction
Yeah, the-
management.
TMP's fees, aux fees, we have our contingency, built into this.
Your FF&E.
And you can see down here, we do have future bid packages, similar to Chico, we'll do the digital sign, and then the playgrounds will come later, we'll bring those to the board. But those are the current estimates for those projects.
So if I look at the 47, so really we're saying it's gonna be 47,316 to complete the building, is that, is that right? Or-
Yeah, that's a fair estimate right now. We still have, like Jamie was saying, some of the playground surfacing, some of the equipment. So we've estimated what those costs are, right? So, we try to encompass everything that we know is going to come, but we know for sure the trade costs are locked in at 35.
So again, just for my further education, so if I look at the original project estimate, the pre-design, it's 44,1, I'm just going about the slides that you sent. So 44,121,408. So that was our project estimate.
Before we even got into the design process, correct? That's what we've been hearing.
Okay. So let me understand where we're getting for the difference. So we got 47, we started out, we got 35, right? And then we said all in is 47, but we originally estimated the cost to be 44.
Yeah, 44,121.
So the difference of 44 and the 47, we're now saying we're going to spend our contingency to meet that cost?
Yes,
Contingency's in there.
Pardon?
Contingency's in the 47.
No,
She-
what,
no,
I
she's
think,
meaning
She's saying
the
the-
difference between 44 and 47.
$3 million.
Yeah, we're using basically the
Oh, I see what
interest
you're saying.
unassigned funds from the bond
yes.
update that we provide you, those unassigned funds would go to cover. Because again, these are estimates. These were estimates that were put into a Treasury Act in 2022. So it just, you put in a number, you estimate,
The economy exchange line.
So we have like 5.1 million in that account, so that would be reflected then in the next update.
update, we
Yeah.
just showed those funds go over.
So I guess the next bullet says costs exceeding the original estimate will be covered by district-wide contingency and noted in the next board quarterly construction update. So we're already planning to use our contingency in our total cost? It's a question.
Not all of it, no, but a portion of it.
Right, but not the contingency assigned to the project.
Oh, no,
That's
correct, that's
separate.
separate, that's
That's what I was
separate.
trying to.
No, so it's
That's what you were
separate.
saying.
That's what I was trying to.
But that was
Yeah.
Basically
the original
unassigned
question.
funds that we have right now, currently, funds sitting in the bank. So the contingency's covered in there. It's similar, yeah,
We have a
it's
project
tiny.
contingency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the
So there's about
1.769
1.7
is,
million, that's different.
can you talk about that a little bit, Tyler? Like, what is that?
The contingency,
Yeah.
so, owner changes, design changes, things that we, modify during the course of construction.
Pocket of soil that
Right,
creeps
so,
into the line when you're doing foundations.
so 5% is the project contingency that is being carried.
And that's normal for a new building.
Right, and any unspent funds will be returned. I anticipate there will be some that she goes well.
Returned.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we were to take the alternates out, so for 1, 3, 5, if we were to take those out, I think I'm just looking for a comparison so we can get closer to what our project estimate is. Because the money we don't spend on Doherty, we have other programs. I mean, it's not gonna be, hot in our pocket, so we can take that money and spend it on other programs that, we have within the district. So I'm just saying, what would be the cost if we don't do 1, 3, and 5?
Well, they're in the, AUK letter of recommendation, those costs are outlined in there. So they have, alternate 1 is $508,630 for the canopy. Alternate 3, the ceiling is $57,720, and then alternate number 5, the terrazzo flooring is $191,100.
So almost $800,000 then? Is that what you're looking?
Yeah.
It's interesting, like the CTE space is 1.2 million over what the,
And how much is it
Estimate.
total? Wasn't it only like,
9 million,
9 million.
8.9 million. So percentage-wise of economies of scale, like, it's not that, for a $40 million or $35 million,
Yeah, I mean,
It's
the
pretty tight.
variance is pretty tight.
pretty tight.
We definitely had, a good bid day if you compare it to CTE and Schuylkill.
I'm glad we're not going out to bid now.
Yeah,
I
it's,
know.
the fuel costs, yeah.
Yeah, we beat it by a couple weeks.
Because that affects asphalt, roofing, I mean, everything ties together to the economy.
So my question is, right, so our parameters were around $44 million,
Our original estimate before we even got into design, yes.
right? That included a bridge.
No, it did
No.
not. No, the bridge
Before-
came in.
You have to, when you submit your application to Treasury, you kind of give buckets because you don't start the design phase until after it passes. Cause
The bridge-
architects don't work,
they came up with
John,
the
you have to
estimate
design it
before
all
they even
before.
went out for the bond.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's even before.
Because I saw pictures, so I could, again, could be
well,
wrong.
the bridge came in early on
Like-
when we did the first iteration, because originally the playground was gonna be on the south side on that
Yeah,
open piece
we've
of
been
property.
So I saw
designing it
it,
over a
right.
year.
Okay,
We
so-
But that was
But it wasn't
way
before.
after the design, or way after when the estimate
Pearson,
comes.
we started designing about a year ago.
Fine. So my question is, here was the bucket, here were the parameters that the board had outlined for the bidding, okay? Where is that scalability? And I know that my understanding is we're over with Chico as well. And so the materials, that's not mine to decide, right? That is not in my purview, that is yours, right? Mine is budget and being accountable to our constituents and the taxpayers. And they are watching and saying, okay, there was 44 for Chico, 44 for Doherty. We are not hitting those, and so if we were over at Chico, I know I asked, like, is this scalable? Will we kind of make up some of this there? And we're over at
Well,
yes.
he just said yes.
Sorry,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, no, he said on Chico, we're expecting to give money back. The first 2 projects that we finished up, hopefully, I mean, if all goes well, we still have a little bit to finish here, but I mean, the first 2 projects, the scoreboard, we were able to give money back to the district, so it's just a matter of keeping us within the realm of the bond total project cost. That's why we have that $5 million of contingency for the overall bond, so that we can ensure that these big projects get completed, because this is the last really big project on the bond program.
So help me understand, that $5 million that we have in the account was from this bond?
Correct, it's from the earned interest, or, we update that every 3 months.
I mean,
So
some of that has sinking fund in it.
Yeah.
I mean, unspent sinking fund, so I just wanna be clear that those are.
That's why I was
yeah,
asking,
Those
right?
are available funds, available to the district. The reality is I understand what you're saying, but when you go, there is rarely a bond that comes into a, you know, to the penny of what you estimate. And I understand what you're saying. You're gonna say, like, at the end of this, could there be projects that have to be pushed to a next bond? That is typical with this bidding market. We have been able to, though, luckily through the interest earned, we've been able to offset some of those increased costs. But I mean, Jamie and I have done many school bonds, and the reality is your estimate is just that, it's an estimate. So if you look at the percentage of variance of this, it's about 5%, which is pretty good. That's why it was a pretty successful bid. Like we said, with Stacy just mentioned CTE, that in the bond application, we had 7.8 million. It came in at 9. That's a 15% variance. It doesn't, the major deliverables of this bond were the 2 new elementaries and the CTE space. So we kind of have to see those through and then make sure that we, you know, keep going and are able to do the projects as well. Could there be 1 or 2 things that it's gonna come to a point? My hope is no, because we are blessed with a sinking fund that allows us to do some of the HVAC, roofs, things like this that will help us through that. But it's just the reality of when you take something and you provide an estimate in 2022 and now you're in 2026, the costs just aren't, they're just not gonna be the same. I've rarely seen it where they are. It's frustrating, I know, for people who say, like community members who say, well, you said X, Y, and Z. I understand that, but the reality is I've done a home improvement on a bathroom.
It is an estimate.
And sometimes it's double the cost, and I'm like, oh, I really wish I hadn't, you know, no, I do want to do the bathroom, but it becomes a lot more expensive than I originally planned for, because there's just unknowns that happen. But I understand what you're saying, I do.
I was gonna say too, I mean, our team is really fighting for this district. You know, Nancy and I and the whole team really works together. Tyler gives us cash flow projections. We give those to PFM so they can actively invest our money, yet have enough in reserve monthly to make our payments to all the subcontractors and stuff. In fact, we're gonna do another round of that. That's what allows us to get the millions and millions of dollars that we've been able to get in earned interest. Some districts just sit on the money because they don't know what to do with it. We're actively pursuing as much money as we possibly can squeeze out of this, working with our financial consultants and our team to make it better for the district. So that's one of the reasons why we're comfortable. Nancy and I have been doing bonds for 30 years and we've never gone over the final amount. We're always very conservative towards the end, but this is part of the process.
I think what would be helpful for me, sometimes we see this sheet with the overall numbers and sometimes we don't. And the sheet is one of the ones that you include sometimes where we have all of the numbers, you know, and we can come down to a final number.
Are you talking about the project or are you talking about the bond budget?
I'm talking about what Jamie includes, and he's done it with Chico, where he takes a big sheet and he has all the numbers, including the sinking.
Like this, or?
No, these are the bids. It's not this one,
He's
it's
talking
the
about
overall.
the bond
one.
budget.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's
It's your
helpful.
tracker that I like.
Yeah, it's a tracker that you have, but it's helpful so we can see. So when we're sitting here, we've got this project, but it's a bond that we're looking at and not just this project. So I would ask if we could include that sheet always, so we can kind of look and say, okay, let's see how we're doing. So these questions really can be answered up front. So, you know, so it's just helpful to see. So if you can include that, I would really appreciate that. And then my next question is, what has been the percentage of interest earned on the bond? How much interest are we earning on our bond? What's the percentage?
I don't know
Well,
what
it's a
the.
number, not
Yeah.
really a percentage. Nancy, do we have any idea of the total that we've earned in interest? You can look it up. I mean, you gotta minus the arbitrage out, right? She's looking at it.
Because that is, you know, one of the great things is that we do have the interest, so we can, and it's great, so we can continue to fund, you know, as much as we go. I'm just trying to figure out, are we pulling in money as we continue to spend our contingencies? Because we started spending contingencies, we'll be out of money, right? Because they're for, you know, design. But if we are funding that account, it's a little different. So what would be that number as we look at that overall sheet so we can kind of see?
Okay. I don't know if you can put, you're not doing that on the fly, are you? You can do that on the fly? I don't wanna put something on there.
No, I mean,
I just
again,
ask.
We can get you the number.
yeah, and again, that sheet would be.
I think it's
Don't we
probably
get it
but at
every
least an
like 3
average.
months?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
every
have
3
that
months
April
we-
study
yeah.
session. Okay.
Yeah, 'cause we had it in January.
Yeah.
So, alright, is there any other questions before you
I
go?
do have one more.
Yeah. go
So I
ahead.
know that trustee Douglas continues to ask about I'm not gonna call it a swamp, but the water,
Protected.
the protected lands in the back. So in any of our projections, and it may be there, you might say it's right there, I just didn't see it, in regards to the cleanup and the maintain of that, because again, whether we do the bridge or not do the bridge, or maybe do the, but we still would have to continue to maintain, you know, the protected areas.
Mhm.
Excuse me, is any of that cost included?
No, this is project costs only.
But
But the
Is
one,
that
I
not
will
included
say,
prior
pardon?
to- that's not included prior to project costs?
No, that,
Well, the initial cleaning.
the initial cleanup,
we-
but I
we
wanted, that's what I was
can't-
gonna have
we
Bill
can't
speak
use-
to that a little
We
bit.
can't use bond for
Maintenance.
maintenance of it after, but the initial cleanup, yes, is included.
But the
But I
river
wanted
isn't
to-
new, haven't we always had to?
Well, there's a fence around it, it's overgrown.
It's just overgrown, yeah.
But I wanted Bill to
Yes.
talk a little bit about the design, cause we are gonna do an initial cleanup, which will make it easier for us to maintain. I didn't want you to get away with
Because
not
that's
having to
part
say
of
that.
Nice try.
We have worked with Eagle, and we're going to be working and partnering with the township as we work through all of the wetland project areas. We met Eagle out on site, and they appreciated the fact that we were gonna clean up. There's a lot of vines that are overgrowing and taking over the trees and taking over the area. They want us to clean that stuff up. So the Eagle, the state is happy that we're going back there. As we go through the process of working within the floodplains, we're cleaning up as much as we can and making sure that the kids can still get by the water and use it for experiments and what have you. Future, long-term, we're trying to make it safe. If you've been back there, there's a fence around it now and it's just been left unattended for a very
Natural.
long time.
Natural.
Natural. There's a lot of fallen limbs and we're intending to clean that up. Now, once it's clean and the new building is set and everybody's in, that'll just be a school.
It's part of our maintenance plan, just like we have landscapers that go to Apple Island and do a cleanup before the kids come, it'll just be worked into the maintenance budget.
Can we use sinking fund money for that?
For cleanup of, I don't think we
Not the
have,
cleanup, but the maintenance of?
not for
No, okay.
landscaping, I think that's a gray
Oh,
area,
that's
I'd have to look that
landscaping.
one up, we'd
Okay.
have to go to this treasury letters and see what's allowable, I don't
Okay.
think it is, but I'd have to check.
I don't think so. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Exciting project.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's that?
Are you leaving?
Yeah, I'll come right up, something.
It's not in the, okay. Moving through next. Agenda item number 7 is our budget to actual February. It's Nancy Weaver, Executive Director of Financial Services, and Justice Office. You can go now. She's good.
Here's our budget to actual, for February 2026. And you can see, I know we had some, variances the last few months in revenue, you can see, they've kind of evened themselves out, which is typically what happens with local revenue, which is, made up the majority of, our property taxes, but at this point, you can see we've, collected, just under 90% of those. In instruction, as I mentioned last month, the adult education In our section 107, we have two grants that make up adult education. Section 107, which is through the state, and WIOA, which is a federal grant. We were reduced about $50,000 in our section 107 portion of that. But since that point, we have actually made up, we've been granted about $45,000 more in WIOA. That will be reflected in the, Second Amendment. We didn't receive that until after I had completed the First Amendment. Pupil support services, we have a variance there, just under 5%. We moved the district psychologist, we moved those to the IDEA flow-through grant. We kind of changed up what we were putting on the grant. So you're gonna see, this is adjusted as part of the first budget amendment. They'll be moved up. And then again, in C, under instructional staff support, a lot of this money was spent early on in the year, so that's why it's showing that it's, we had a little more left last year at this time. And then in D, which is transportation, this includes, we have a $308,000 still unspent. We're waiting for the electric bus to come in, and that's not something that we had last year. And then our final variance that I talk about, again, is in the prior fiscal year, we had transfers budgeted to other funds, and we do not have any transfers that we're gonna make to other funds this year. So, that's it.
Does anyone have any questions? Thanks for those details, Nancy. Appreciate it. I think we're good. Thank you. Agenda item number 8 is our Abbott Secure Vestibule review. Mr. James Saddlemeyer is back at the table.
By myself, not my team. Okay,
You can do it.
we can do it together. Okay, a safety security project that we identified was, the need for a secure entry vestibule over at current Chico Abbott, which will be Doherty for the next 2 years. And then after that, as part of our long-term strategic visioning, this was going to be the North End Preschool. So in order to do this secure vestibule, if we look here as you walk in the main 4 doors right now, you get buzzed in by an A-phone. And then earlier last year, we put in a second A-phone here, so you actually have to get buzzed in twice. So it gives them a second chance to screen visitors. But really, it's not optimum for the way offices work. As you know, we have secure vestibules in all of our school buildings. So essentially, it's taking out the second set of doors right here and putting in a whole new set of doors right back here, as you can see, and then cutting in a new whole doorway and side light so there's good visibility into the front office. The front office staff sits right here, so they'll be able to see who's coming in those doors and do a second screening, because they'll be screened in by the A-phone outside, and then they get screened into the office, buzzed in, and then from there, these doors that lead back out into the building will also be electronically controlled, so they'll have a third chance to keep any issues out of the building. So this whole project was bid out. We took bids last Wednesday on March 4th, and the issue is that smaller jobs sometimes are harder to bid. I know I used to be a construction estimator for years, and I used to do this. It's when you have to mobilize to a site, but it's a very small project, you still have to bring all your tools, you have to bring your supplies and everything. And so it's a little harder to estimate sometimes, and so you'll see in some of these categories, there's some wider variances. So just like I had mentioned when we had all those bids come in for Doherty, we have to do the same thing. So that's what we've been working on this week, and we'll continue to work on next week, is interviewing the contractors. So they've already had to, there was a couple contractors that missed their bid, so you'll see some very large variances, for example, on hardware, and the other category was paint. So right now, as we sit, I talked to Jameson Parola is actually the project manager. He's working with Tyler overseeing this job. So as of today, the interviews that we've done so far, we're sitting at about $171,401 in construction costs. So once again, we'll do up the whole sheet of the project cost when we bring it to you for formal approval. But if approved at the next board meeting, this would be installed this summer and ready for Doherty next fall. $171,401 was the trade cost. I'd have to have them calculate the whole sheet on it. I don't wanna guesstimate on that.
Can you get that to us
Yeah.
before the next meeting?
That'll be part of
You
the
want-
packet. Well,
Right.
Yeah, I thought, I didn't know if you were walking over.
I was doing
He's gonna go upstairs.
So the two front office staff sit right here, right here. So they both will have visibility, because this door has a full light on it, so they can see who's coming in, and then it has a side light. It also is safety laminate glass. All that glass will be replaced with hardened safety laminate glass.
So all of this,
Correct. Everything surrounding the office is all safety laminate glass.
they'll have,
And so the safety laminate glass, you can't smash through it, you can't get into the building.
I don't remember the publicized version.
Is this sinking fund?
Yes.
Jesus, I'm
We
like,
Are we using sinking fund or bond dollars?
This is gonna be in the bond. I have, sorry, Art, Eric, wait.
it's okay.
I wanna, no, I want Art's, let's answer Art's question
Oh, yeah,
first, because he
sorry,
was
I
up here, and then we'll go to the next one. Sorry, Art.
They control all the door locks, right?
Correct.
From here.
Yeah, you can see it says electronic local control, and then that one says new, electronic lock. So whoever gets into the office, whoever is screened and is allowed into the office, they cannot get out into the building. Those doors leading out in the building are also controlled by a buzzer that the front office staff will have access to.
And this is Orchard Lake.
That is Orchard Lake, correct.
So Art, where are you putting the buzzers to?
You'll still have the A phone outside, so when a person walks up to that building, they'll have a visual on them from that camera. We also have our main building cameras that have a good view of that front hallway area and that front vestibule. And then once they're buzzed in through the outside A phone, they'll walk up to that door where the front office staff will have a visual on the person coming up to the door, and then they will buzz them into the office space. Once they're cleared and vetted, then they'll buzz them back into the building if it's a parent, visitor, volunteer, whatever.
Through that door, you can see the gun shop right across the street.
Yeah. So right now, on our sheet that we do every 3 months that we've been talking about, we have $3.482 million for the preschool renovation. So this project would actually come out of that. So I will drop down and add a line below that tracks the cost of these projects. Like we talked about, when we add projects, they end up on this sheet. So it's not,
It'll become
just,
committed.
pardon?
It'll become
committed once we approve it, and it'll be tracked as a separate project under Abbott.
What bucket?
Pardon?
What bucket?
It's gonna be under
Abbott bond.
we have 3.482 for preschool renovation. It'll be coming out of that
Abbott bond.
for the Abbott bond.
So that was
Bond,
23.
23 bond.
Thank you.
Yeah, 23 bond, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Just,
Yeah, she just
Got a lot
wanted to know
of
which
numbers
one,
around.
which one.
thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions?
Hey Jamie, you know what, you mentioned that, and it's true, like when you come, you said you gotta bring all your tools at one time, and is there any other projects, because again, we can make sure that we, really utilize our work, right? Because they gotta bring everything anyway. Is there anything else around some of our surrounding buildings that we need to do? Or is this the last door that we are, kind of retooling, or?
Well, there's stuff happening all the time. As an example, the door on the gym here at the preschool sticks. So with the sinking fund, we're having that door completely replaced and put in new locks and everything so it's secure. So it's part of our overall. If you remember, I mentioned it before. We have projects that we line up that we know have to happen, but it's a matter of having the time to be able to design it correctly and work it in with our other projects. So this is just one that's a little bit bigger than our normal stuff that we do day to day, that we bring to the board because it's over the threshold that we have to vote on.
Got it.
All right, thanks everyone, thanks Jamie.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 9 is our EL Education West Lincoln Middle School Curricular Resources Review. Mr. Scott Long and Emily Crawford will address the board. You guys, I'm sorry if this meeting is running so late. I always try and get our teachers and stuff back.
We're really glad to have Emily this evening. Emily, thanks so much for joining us and for piloting. Good evening, everybody. We're thankful to be here this evening where we're going to share our review for a proposal for EL education at the middle school level. So first of all,
Before you go on, Emily Crawford is at the middle school. in
she is.
English language arts, just so everybody knows.
Yes, sixth grade, please.
Thank you, President Brickman. And I want to thank our pilot committee that was a part of the process. You'll see here Emily Crawford from the middle school is a part of the pilot committee, along with three other members from the middle school, including administrative members. You can see the high school members as well as OEC, and then members of learning services. And then to the right, you can see all the different pilot teachers. So Emily was one of 4 teachers that piloted EL at West Bloomfield Middle School. We piloted Study Sync in 7th grade at the middle school and Savas My Perspectives. At the high school, we piloted My Perspectives and Study Sync. Without the efforts that they provided all year long, we wouldn't be where we're at today. So thank you, Emily, and thank you to all of our English teachers throughout the district. So I just want to set the stage first and foremost, why what we're talking about tonight matters. First and foremost, it really strengthens instructional consistency and aligns with our K-5 EL education implementation. So this graph is kind of small, I apologize for that, but what you will see is the blue and red lines are actually our 6th and 7th grade state assessment scores, and the green line above that is our 5th grade scores. So one thing that has historically happened over the last 3 to 4 years is our 5th graders perform very well, especially in comparison to the county and the state, and when they get to 6th grade, something happens and they drop off. I'm not here to say that it's because of our teachers. I'm not here to say that it's solely because of an instructional resource or lack thereof, but I am here to say the more that we can align and create some consistency for our students, the better chance that we're gonna have success. You'll see here, this graph is one that you've seen before. You'll notice that in the elementary level, EL has had a really great impact in our elementary classrooms. For example, in 5th grade, we've already increased 10% the percentage of students that are projected to be proficient for the MSTEP. The other reason why this is important is we really believe that a knowledge building approach is going to strengthen reading comprehension and knowledge across content areas. I've referenced this before and other presentations have about the baseball study, where there was actually a study done where they put lots of different types of readers in a room and they asked them to read a passage about baseball. Some had lots of knowledge about baseball, some had very little knowledge about baseball. What's not surprising is that the readers that had a high reading ability and high knowledge of baseball, they did extremely well, as you can see in that purple graph. But what's very surprising is those students that had a low reading ability but a high knowledge of baseball did equally as well. Conversely, those that had a high reading ability and very little knowledge of baseball scored about as half as well. So we know that when kids have background knowledge and readers have background knowledge and schema about the world around them, they can be more successful as readers. And when we get to middle school where you are reading to learn and not learning to read, that matters that much more. A couple other points I want to make as we get into the deeper content of EL education is that when we get into classrooms throughout this semester, time after time after time again, there were high levels of student engagement. Student survey feedback indicated a high interest in the instructional approach, specifically as it related to engagement. So we asked students about their engagement with texts, and you'll see that EL scored a 3 out of 3, whereas the other resources scored significantly lower when we asked students. And we asked students about their engagement in the class as a whole, scored a 2.1, about a half a point higher than the other 2 resources. This shows you what I put Emily through all semester long, along with all the other pilot committee members. We had 4 meetings from the start of the year that did not include the training they had for their resources. And during those meetings, we looked at a wide variety of data, whether it was observation data that our leadership team did when we watched the pilot classes in action, artifact and presentation data where Emily and other pilot committee members would come up and present to the whole pilot. We would look at different artifacts that they were sharing and score those. We looked at student survey data and then pilot teacher data. And when we finally got to the end of it, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we made a recommendation to Curriculum Council that they approved unanimously that got us to this point. And really, when you think about our curricular resource cycle, we went through the evaluation last year, we piloted this year, we're hoping to implement next year at the middle school level. So when it comes to what type of data we're looking at, everything that we looked at really boiled down to 6 domains. And I'm not gonna read all of them to you here, but those are the 6 things that we scored when we got into classrooms, the 6 things that we scored when we asked students in their student survey, teacher observations, all those things. And You'll see here the overall score in our curricular resource rubric, pretty close between Savas and EL Education. But as you dug deeper and really looked at things that were really important to us in our committee, things like student engagement, things like text and reading opportunities, evidence-based thinking, EL scored consistently higher in those sub-elements than StudySync or Savas did. The other critical point is when you look at ed reports, you can see ed reports for gateways 1, 2, and 3 for EL Education scored 90% or higher in all of those gateways. Gateway 1 is alignment to the state standards. Gateway 2 is the types of instructional supports and design there are for students and for teachers. And Gateway 3 is how do we measure student learning. Whereas conversely, Savas, when you look at Gateway 3, which is one of the other resources that we piloted that scored pretty close in our rubric, scored significantly lower in that Gateway 3, which is how do we measure student learning, what types of different assessments do we provide to students, and how do we authentically measure their ability to be great readers and writers. So the general overview of EL Education, it's a research-based literacy curriculum designed to strengthen instruction. It really focuses, as I mentioned earlier, about a knowledge-building curriculum with high-quality instructional design. The literacy opportunities are integrated, so you won't see a time where reading, writing, speaking, and listening are taught in isolation. Instead, they're woven together through every lesson. There's authentic performance tasks, which I've loved to observe in the middle school this year, and there's equitable access for all learners. When you look at module instruction, you'll see in every grade level, Module 1 is always reading, writing, and speaking that's grounded in evidence. So every year, that's the first type of module that they'll learn about. Module 2, they'll spend more time researching to build and present knowledge. Module 3, they'll start to analyze and interpret and evaluate text. And then Module 4, they'll spend more time researching to write and present arguments. You'll see in 6th grade, they learn about Greek mythology. They read the book Percy Jackson, which Emily will talk about in a little bit. And you can see all the different topics and the books that are associated with this. At the very end of the presentation, I have links to every single article or main resource that the students will read that you can look at your leisure prior to voting later on this month. Next, I'm going to pass it over to Emily because she's way more entertaining than me when she talks about these types of things, and she's going to share how this has been beneficial for her students and her peer teachers.
Yeah, I'm going to talk more about the practical side of things. Obviously, I've been doing it every day. So the way that it's kind of structured, just so you can see how it looked for students as well as teachers, in one school year for each grade, you'll have 4 modules, so you can break it up by marking period at the middle school level. And each module, as you can see up there on the top left one, there are 3 units in each one. So Unit 1 will really focus on background knowledge, kind of getting familiar with the main text. So for example, our first one was the Percy Jackson one. It's really building up the knowledge of that, building up the knowledge of what Greek mythology is, and kind of having that cultural capital to be able to then write about it and speak about it as they move forward. As you get into the final unit of that module in Unit 3, that is when they're doing more like performance tasks. I know Scott had the pleasure of seeing some that were like slideshows and they got to speak to people about it. We've had fishbowl discussions where kids are able to like articulate their thoughts out loud, which has been really wonderful to see. And so that's more when they're applying their knowledge. They might be writing an essay of sorts, and that kind of is towards the end of it. Now in each unit, they do provide you with a mid-unit assessment as well as an end-of-unit assessment, which allows you as a teacher to consistently track if they are meeting the standards as they're going through. And that follows the same pattern, Module 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there is consistency for teachers as well as students who thrive on consistency and procedure as they're going through the year and they start to become more familiar. I know in my classroom there's a setup, they know what is happening each day, which is nice for them. As well as that, as I talked about the standards, they have kind of this laid out for every single grade if you do want to look at it, but it shows you exactly what modules are touching on what standards. So that you know that you are hitting every single 6th grade, for me 6th grade standards as you're going through. It's the same for 7th and 8th grade, which is very nice. As well as on the mid and end of unit assessments, every single question has in parentheses like the standard that they're assessing, which allows teachers to, they have a tracking system going on, like who's met this standard, who needs a bit more support, and you're able to do a bit more targeted interventions on that, which is really nice as a teacher perspective. Here is a bit further, so this is from the website. This is an example of what one lesson will look like. So each lesson kind of comes with a folder of things that you can have. So it has student supporting materials, which will be a bunch of links to like sheets they might need, things like their entrance tickets or the activity we're working on. It has teacher supporting materials on how you can support students. It provides supports for EL students as well. How can we scaffold to meet their needs? Also really nice is it does provide like a slide deck, like a general slide deck for teachers to use, and they can edit as they see fit, which I think helps with the consistency across classes. So I know what's happening in my room is very similar to what's happening in other 6th grade English classroom, which I think is important, so all students are kind of receiving the same education as they go through, no matter who their teacher is. Additionally in that, you can see at the bottom, each lesson comes with a general agenda. So they'll tell you like about how many minutes needs to be spent on each. So about 5 minutes for Engage the Learner, which is usually our entrance ticket where it's focused on a skill. It then has where you might look at a chapter and then have an activity with it. It does change on the lesson obviously, but it gives you a general time frame, which I found to be very helpful in keeping the rigor up in our classroom and making sure that we're following through and not getting lost in where we should. So it's very nice in that sense, and I think it's been a good structure as I've been getting more familiar with the curriculum myself as we go forward. But there's hyperlinks on there, which are great for teachers that love online resources, but there's also, we've had the books as well, which I know some teachers prefer the teacher workbook, so just, there's something for everyone with that. I know I did talk about the standards a bit, but this is how you can see on each lesson. So each lesson, it will have hyperlinked each of the standards that are being touched on in that lesson, and then if you click on them, it will go into like what each standard is, obviously if you don't have them all remembered. And then it will also provide learning targets for every single lesson so that we know it's tailored to the correct thing. Additionally on that, they provide you with the standards that are being addressed cross-curricular. So for example, in our Percy Jackson unit, a lot of like history standards were being met. Currently in the Boy Who Harnessed the Wind that I'm actively doing, there are a lot of science standards that are overlapping. We're doing things like design thinking, and I know they're doing that in their science classes as well. So it's been nice to see how what they're learning in reading and ELA is actively being applied in their other subjects as well, and they can kind of see the full circle on why reading is really important and for everything they do. So this is a bit of more about the curriculum and the books. I know Scott linked them more specifically at the end, but you can kind of see a general layout here. As you're going through, I'm obviously most familiar with the 6th grade one, so we started with The Lightning Thief, Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, and then we have 2 things like Two Roads and Hidden Figures that come up. So across the board, as you can see, the 7th grade one is in the top right, and the bottom right is the 8th grade one. It's a very diverse range of text, which I particularly like because I think it gives every student an opportunity to find a book that they enjoy. On top of that though, we aren't just using these 4 books. So each main book is like our main text, but as you can see kind of in there, I know it's quite small, there are additional texts that we look at that supplement with the book and help build their knowledge. So for example, in our Percy Jackson one, we were reading The Lightning Thief, which was our main text. However, we read lots of articles on Cronus, Medusa, Helios, we had Hestia as we were going forward, and those are more like non-fiction-y type articles. So yes, we're reading an overall fiction book, and it's kind of our main text that we're going through. However, we're reading other texts and applying them all together, so they are exposed to different kind of modes of that. We also were able to see like a scene from the movie. They wrote an essay comparing that to a scene from the book, and so we're kind of applying things that kids find interesting to their learning to try to keep them engaged. I can appreciate not every book will be every kid's favorite, as we know, but with my opinion on this is the reason I preferred EL over the other one in the curriculum pilot, and I know I've said this there before, is I love that we get to read books with them, and I think it's kind of something that is, you know, being lost as kids' attention span goes down, but the engagement in the books and having their own copy of the book has been the highest engagement I've seen. I've worked at other schools before this, and this is the most my kids have really, really enjoyed like learning, and I know we had some really positive feedback from the kids when they did their survey results, which was really nice. And I think, you know, you have some kids that wouldn't identify themselves as readers, but they were checking out the second Percy Jackson book, which was really nice to see as a teacher, and something really positive to go forward with, which is nice.
And something Emily didn't touch on because she didn't have access to it during the pilot is every module has a set of like classroom recommended texts that connect to the topic. And our goal, and you'll see in a second, is to have those classrooms outfitted with those classroom libraries during those modules. And there are varying lexile ability, varying reading ability, so every reader has access to texts about that topic to do additional reading outside of the classroom, which we know, based on research shows that you have to read about 22 to 24 books at or slightly above your reading level to just maintain your reading ability. So the more text that kids can read every year, the better. So that leads us to budget information, everybody's favorite topic. There is a $5,000 cost for an implementation launch where EL Education sends out their trainers for a full day of training. Our hope would be to do that in June, right after the teachers get out of school. The reason being is they want to have access to the knowledge over the summer because they love to plan. There is school-based coaching, very similar to what we've done at the elementary level, where EL coaches come on site for 12 different days and support district leaders and building leaders. That's $45,600. Both of these initial costs here would be fully funded by grant dollars, and they're one-time costs. Then when you look at materials and resources, $51,573 one-time cost for the recommended text that I had just mentioned, along with all the trade books that connect to every single module and the teacher manuals. That comes with free shipping and handling. Woo-hoo. The ongoing implementation, this would be a yearly recurring cost, is something that we did not purchase during the pilot, and that's the student workbooks for each module, which would cost us $50,490 on an annual basis. So our total cost for these two items would be $102,063. About $50,000 of it would be a recurring cost. The rest of them are one-time costs. So that will be the recommendation that we bring to the Board of Education at our next meeting. And as I mentioned before, we have the whole detailed curricular resource adoption form that shows you our entire journey that we went on over the last year and a half that you can look at, scores from the equity rubric, links to all the required text for every grade level, and then links to the recommended text there for you to dive into as well.
Well done. I don't know nothing makes me smile more than when you said that the students are checking out the second book in the series. Like that just brings so much joy to me.
It's been wonderful to see, it really has.
Yeah.
I just love when I hear you're making it fun for kids to read. But I did know, did you say that 24 books per year to maintain your reading level?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. But it's great.
Yeah.
And if you make it fun to read, everybody wins.
Yes, exactly. It's really cool too because when I think about our middle school boy readers, as a former language arts teacher, it was always hard to hook them. When I walk into her classroom and the other classrooms that are implementing, I'm not seeing that challenge because they're learning about a wide variety of topics and they're engaged, which is really exciting to me.
I have 20 more books there for you this
You know,
year.
that's what I just said.
Thank you for this. And my question goes to the graph that you showed at the beginning.
Yes.
With the nice green line up here and then the two below. What are we doing for the two below, but also those that are at the high school that we missed something, right? Right? You said like we're not making any.
Well, yeah, so I think us getting this resource and training our teachers is a start, right? So like when you look at, what you're referring to is this right here, correct? Well, I can actually put it up for you.
That's that one,
You're
right?
referencing that. So like, this is the 5th grade
Mhm.
percentage of kids proficient, and this is what it looked like over the last several years in 6th and 7th grade.
And then we have 8, and then those 8th graders go to 9th grade and
Right,
stuff.
well
and then
actually, crazy enough, like our 8th grade scores jump up a little bit.
Okay.
And then our 11th grade scores, when we have the PSAT, the next standardized test, they bump up a little bit as well. However, that doesn't mean that we're done, right?
I appreciate that.
So
Yeah.
one of the things that we just got a grant for, I'm not sure if I've mentioned it at this board table or not, is there is the middle school and high school version of Letters. It's a asynchronous course that we're gonna give our teachers access to. We were able to pay for the licenses for that. And that really teaches our middle school and high school educators that are specifically teaching English, how do you support a struggling reader? Because they're really good at like the reading strategies and the comprehension strategies and how to get kids interested in books, but they haven't had all that training of what makes a reader tick, that struggling foundationally.
I just wanna make sure we're mindful about those.
Absolutely.
Art, did you have something? Oh, I saw a hand over here.
I can.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but high school was also looking at a new
Thank you,
programming
yes.
as well.
Yes,
So
we're actually
still
doing
in that
a second round of
phase.
piloting next semester, or fall semester.
They weren't ready to like make a
Yeah,
decision yet.
Odell, is it, that's comparable?
Odell is gonna be one that we pilot, and we'll pilot Savas again, but this time they have like novel-based units. We're gonna try those out at the high school level as well.
And just one more thing, in curriculum council, you had mentioned that, and which I love, that this program, you read an actual book from start to finish, and a lot of the other programs, you're just reading excerpts. So, I think that's great for these kids to read an entire book, like you said, with attention spans.
Yeah, I did mention that, it was more of a room, I thought I had more time to talk there. It was that because I had kids really enjoy it, and they're like, are we almost done with this book? And I'm seeing that now with this as well. They're like, I can't believe we're already almost done with it. And it's really interesting because I know a lot of the curriculums and teachers have gone the other way, that we need to keep their interests, and we all know they're on TikTok and things like that. And I've almost seen the opposite of that happening in the room, and I think they are really enjoying it. They also, I know middle schoolers are supposed to be older, they really like being read to. Like, I read the chapters to them, and it's really good for their fluency, just as a teacher, for them to follow along as they're reading and to have a copy of their own book. And I know sometimes I'll have a sub and they'll be like, they don't read like you, or something like that. So they're like, it doesn't sound the same when I read it. So I think it's really good for them, and they're not as old as they seem. And going back to a point you made actually in our curriculum council, was we had looked at some K through 8 schools as well, where they were higher in the 6th grade standard, and we were saying with the elementary school having EL, possibly having that in the middle school will keep that consistency on that big jump to 6th grade, which we're hoping will help scores in the future, because it's something that stays the same for them. It's building over time.
So my question, thank you so much for the information. So how do we measure success? Meaning that we know that the pilot, and we have this cohort of students. So are we going to follow them along so we can measure that cohort? Or key performance indicators, how are we gonna measure that within the classes?
Same way that we show our performance on a quarterly basis and then twice a year. We're gonna look at their state assessment scores, we're gonna look at their NWA achievement scores, we're gonna look at their growth in NWA. We're going to measure success by how well our teachers are providing instruction in the classroom as a result of the support that we provide them. I think that's equally as important as just the assessment scores. The level of engagement of our readers and writers in the classroom is absolutely huge too. Those things all speak volumes.
So did the pilot group, was it a certain group of students that started with the pilot, or did you, I remember hearing.
All of 6th grade piloted this
Okay.
resource.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
So Deborah, every grade had a different resource. So 8th grade piloted a different resource, and seventh grade piloted one resource, and 8th grade piloted another. So they did 3 resources. I think that's what you were maybe referencing.
Yeah, because I remember again a pilot of different ones, so that's good. So again, just keep going.
Emily, I'm sure you saw my hands jump up when we said about reading to the kids, because it brought back a memory. My mother had a bumper sticker on her car that said, kids who read will read to.
Just, Emily, thank you very much. It's so wonderful to see our teacher leaders take the initiative to, come to a board meeting, present on kind of the process. I can tell you I did not do that as a teacher, but I give you a lot of credit. But one thing I just want to say is the intentionality with these pilots, Scott, that you lead is just really impressive. You really don't leave a stone unturned, and you have a comprehensive team that's representative, and you can just see the buy-in. I say this to be funny. We were trying to save money last year, and Scott and his team, outsourced the copying of the workbooks in hopes of saving money. And when we found out the balance, it was like, for all that trouble of copying, it was like a $2,000 difference. So he is looking for every way to find a way to do it, and I give you a lot of credit. This year, I think we go with the workbooks. The cost-benefit analysis is just, it's just not there, but I give you guys a lot of credit for
For trying.
really being creative and trying to find ways to to use grant funds and things like this. I'm really excited that this is gonna be hopefully coming to the middle school next year.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Good job, Emily.
Great
Nice
job.
work. Have a great night.
And yeah, Scott came to the committee, because I,
I will.
like, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall, talking about all those different resources.
Oh, it was,
I would have
it was
been
awesome.
insightful too.
I actually have these really cool, I have to wait till she leaves. I don't want her to hear.
Welcome in anytime you want.
I'll tell you later. As a way to say thank you.
You can add that to the
Okay.
motion.
I got a motion.
Come on, Nick.
Oh, there you go, so am I.
Do you want me to be your slide editor, Amy Quinn?
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, we have another group, oh, you want to introduce first, right?
Okay, so first I'm gonna say agenda item number 10 is our Bridges Mathematics third edition curriculum resource review. Mr. Scott Long and Amy Quinn and Jennifer Graham will address the board. Jennifer Graham is in Chico and Amy is part of the Learning Services.
Danya mentioned how we don't leave any stones unturned, and you're gonna see the same thing here as Amy and Jennifer Graham present. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here this evening. We really appreciate it. Amy, as always, thank you for leading. You did a great job with this and everything that you do, so go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you. So first, I'm going to start a little bit about our process and looking at this timeline here. So last year, we looked at, we followed the same different phases with any curriculum review. So last year was the time where we looked at our data to really see, all right, where are we with our math data, with our math resource? What the committee decided last spring is that our data is looking good. When we look at Bridges, we're happy with Bridges, but we found out there was an update to Bridges. It's called the third edition. And so the committee decided at that time not to explore any other pilot, but to just do a pilot with Bridges third edition to kind of see if those updates really make a difference. And so that led to phase 2, which then, of course, was the training. And so each teacher, so Jennifer, for example, for second grade, got an update kit. So she still had her Bridges material she used, but if it was a different number corner calendar grid, or it was a different workplace, that she got that in kit. And then those teachers who were part of the pilot were trained. We had different check-ins and surveys, and then we had different after-school meetings. So for example, one of the after-school meetings, we had a consultant from Oakland Schools, and Jennifer led that meeting, and we looked at math essentials. And then the committee came together, we went into classrooms and did some looked at different artifacts. Each teacher shared different artifacts that was on the pilot, and then we did our surveys looking at our look-fors that Jennifer's going to talk about, our equity rubric, and then that next step was then presenting to Curriculum Council, and now here today. And so I just briefly wanted to talk about this. So this is a graph showing from spring 23, spring 24, spring 25. And so you can see our math scores, when we looked at it, that's where we came across, okay, let's either keep what we're doing or compare to would we want to go with Bridges third edition. And Jennifer is going to take the next slides.
I would like to share, we had a phenomenal team that did include representation from all grade levels K through 5, in addition to a parent representative and Amy. We were very diligent about pursuing teaching this curriculum with the updates, with fidelity, just to ensure that it did meet all of our needs. So it was phenomenal to work with the team towards that effort. The Bridges third edition does have 3 main components. That includes the main lesson, which we're all familiar and comfortable with, the number corner lesson, which is a beautiful touch of continuing to practice skills that are applied in the regular lesson, in addition to a third component, which is that workplace area, which provides games for the students to actively engage in participating in those skills that they've learned. So it's wonderful. We as a team focused on the math essentials and the math practices that are part of the K-5 structure. We did include making sure that we as a team, if you click on those links, it will provide you the specific details regarding the essentials and the practices. courses, we, if I go to the very next slide, focused on the following things. We asked all of the pilot teachers what their feedback was in terms of specific things. Did they feel that this third edition did provide the standards that we needed for our students and everything we did align with those standards? Overwhelmingly, it was yes. We did ask them, did it allow the students to articulate and explain their reasoning for their answers solidly? They were able to do that. And most importantly, could they argue to justify their reasoning? They may have an answer, but can you explain it in a way that does make sense? Overwhelmingly, it was a yes. So the teachers said they loved the structure, they loved how this third edition just enhanced what we were doing, and no one felt it was overlearning an entirely new curriculum. It was just adding those essential pieces we thought that would make it more rounded. We did consider our equity rubric to make sure that all of these categories were solid with the students, that it was learner-centered, that it was critical, focused, that it was culturally sustaining, that the student-centered resources available as well as teacher-centered resources. The website, I have to admit, is phenomenal. It is updated in a very easy to engage way for teachers, so no one will feel as if they're taking on a new task. They will just see a presentation that is very user-friendly for teachers. If you look at the curriculum resource highlights, if you click those links, you will see how each grade level did identify, wow, these are the new things we saw in the updated edition, and how they have actively implemented those things within the grade levels. So you'll see actual artifacts there, but there are some new amazing games, but nothing to the point that it is overwhelming for anyone, but they do feel it is truly enhancing and streamlining what we are currently doing.
That leads me to my part here. The great thing about going to the updated version is the professional learning is free, so Bridges will come out and provide that free professional learning on our opening day, district-wide provided professional development in August. As Amy mentioned, there's an upgrade kit that each classroom teacher will need. So that's gonna cost us $40,000 for the upgrades to the third edition across the entire district. And then our ongoing implementation materials, which include our daily student edition workbook, the number corner workbook, and the home connections, which was previously approved during the last resource cycle. Those are the same items with some adjustments in terms of the updates, but that has been previously approved before, for a total of $74,400, $34,000 and some change of which would be a general fund cost. That's the recommendation that we'll bring to you later in March. Amy has the whole adoption form along with her team, everything that they did. It shows you the entire journey. Their rubric scores are linked there as well. That concludes the presentation.
And I do have a copy of, if you're interested in looking at the difference from the second edition to the third edition by grade level, I do have that here as well.
We mentioned that Curriculum Council approved this too, right?
Yes.
That was okay. I thought so.
Anyone have any questions or comments for the team? I will say they were very excited because some of the things that was clunky in the version that
Yes.
generally we're using, even though we made great strides, it was, some things were clunky
Such
for
as number
teachers.
corner?
Yes.
The way that it is.
Yes, but they were very, very enthusiastic that, it's way more user-friendly for teachers and that translates over to students. So I thought I would just express that.
They being the curriculum council.
The teachers that piloted,
Oh, okay.
they were, yeah, so, does anyone have any questions, follow-up? Deborah?
Just a comment, hey, great job. I can hear the excitement before.
Thank you.
I can hear it, I can see it, and so again, with that buy-in, I'm sure that transfers right into, the classrooms with the students, so thank you so much.
I just wanted to clarify, so it says 34,000 from the general fund, but honestly, whether we do this new edition or not,
We're still,
paying-
yeah.
Always have
Correct,
work
that's
for us.
correct.
We have to have the
You will
work.
get supplies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Consumables.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's not a new 34,
No,
Correct.
that is
it
a
would just be a different,
Yeah, different.
Correct.
Graham and Amy for all of their hard work, obviously Scott as well. Again, walking into your classroom, Ms. Graham, is nothing short of a pleasure. So
Always.
always,
True.
yeah, always. And so I appreciate all your hard work and taking the leadership to help with these pilots. It's a lot of time and investment, but we're seeing the benefits with, especially within mathematics. Yes, so we appreciate all your hard work.
I know Jennifer spent a lot of time outside of the classroom, in addition to this pilot too, like just becoming the math expert amongst her elementary peers, and so we appreciate all the extra time you spent. Thanks for being a leader.
And I would also say her morning messages and all of that. Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Good job, Amy.
Thank
Good job,
you.
John.
Good night, thank you.
Okay, agenda item agenda item number 11 is our Capturing Kids' Hearts one training for K-5.
Yep.
And that is Mr. Scott Long. Once again.
Just me this time. So I highlighted a few things from our strategic plan. One, that education is a shared responsibility between our students, staff, and family. Two, that positive community experiences and relationships are key to success. Three, in our belief statements, everyone deserves to be seen, heard, and respected for who they are. And then the goal area of learning environments and culture. And I highlighted those elements of our strategic plan because that's truly what Capturing Kids' Hearts is all about. And it's what our elementary schools for the past 5+ years have been all about. Making connections, making sure that kids feel seen, heard, and valued. Creating positive experiences in the classroom and outside of the classroom. You'll see that one of our objectives this year under that culture and learning environment is to continue to implement CKH and do a great job for each student. If you know anything about Capturing Kids' Hearts, what you know is that it's a relationship-centered school culture framework. The Flippin Group created it many years ago, and it's how do we build relationships with students, from staff to student, student to student, while creating safe, respectful learning and engaging learning environments so that classroom cultures can run themselves, so that students feel empowered to be able to run their own classroom and be accountable for it. They do that, the teachers do that by creating relationship building routines that they learn from CKH. The social contract, which I know when you go on walkthroughs, oftentimes the student ambassador will walk up to you and explain their commitments and ask you to sign it. The Excel communication model, which is really a flow of how you can deliver a lesson or any chunk of information where we engage, we explain, we communicate, we explore, and we launch. The accountability of behavior and how teachers can make sure that students are accountable for their behavior, but also how students can make sure that themselves and each other are accountable for their behavior. And then overall positive school culture. At the end of the day, if you have a student's heart, you have their head, right? And so Capturing Kids' Hearts 1 is a training, it's a 2-day training experience that is your introduction to doing it really well, where educators learn all the things that we talked about. How do you build a long-lasting, sustainable social contract? How do you create relationship routines that really build trust? How do you use the Excel model in everything that you do? And the issue is, over the past 3 or 4 years, we've had many new teachers that have been hired that do not have that CKH1 training. I believe at each building there's at least 8 or more teachers that need that CKH1 training. What we've been doing over the last 3 years is giving our own hybrid version model of it through learning services, but we really do believe that 2-day training gives them exactly what they need to run it with fidelity. When you do the CKH1 training, that also allows the classroom teacher to have access to a campus-specific subscription that gives them access to all the resources, whether it's the lead-worthy traits that they focus on each month or any additional professional learning. We launched Capturing Kids' Hearts at Scotch Elementary and Orchard Lake Middle School back in 2013. It's a long time ago. Jim Scrivo's been doing it at Scotch ever since then. And he was the first showcase school before all 4 elementary schools became showcase schools. 18-19 was the first time that we launched it. We expected Capturing Kids' Hearts in all elementary schools. And at that time, every teacher got trained in CKH1. The most recent CKH1 training that we've had, that 2-day training, was July of 2021. But since then, in July of 2023, we did something called a half-day recharge training. And 23-24 was the first time that all 4 elementary schools earned the CKH National Showcase Award, which we're really proud of. And they earned it last year, and my hope is that they're gonna earn it again this year. The issue, as I mentioned earlier, is if you look in 25-26, the difference in percentage of teachers that have been trained in CKH1 versus 2 years ago is significantly different. We wanna make sure that those teachers feel supported, that they have access to the resources that are in the CKH Premium, and by offering CKH1, it allows us to do that. The training, our hope is that it would take place in June after the teachers get out of school. That would be fully funded by grant dollars, $25,500 fee. The CKH Premium is something that we already pay for, so that's not a new cost. That is captured by grant dollars. And then there's a district support that Danya, myself, Johanna are able to leverage to track data, track implementation support, and that gives you the total cost there. So we would be recommending this to the board later in March. That's the more specific recommendation that we have, and that concludes this presentation.
What questions does everybody?
I love that I learned last week that our transition center is, certified, what would you call that?
National Showcase.
Yeah.
National certified.
Only
So-
one in the country, right?
Yes, so
Yeah.
I love learning that. You mentioned in there that the Orchard Lake Middle School, 2013?
Yeah, a long time
So
ago.
where are we with, say, middle school, like with this premium, campus premium, is that only?
So we actually don't utilize that for the middle school level.
Okay.
We opted
They
years
used
ago to go in a different,
Okay.
different
Okay.
pathway with social emotional learning.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
They did used to. Anybody else? Alright, thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just wanna say thanks for all your support with everything that we ask and we bring to the table. It really means a lot and it makes a big difference for our teachers.